I love movies. And I've been lucky enough to make a few in my lifetime. I've also seen how movies have changed over the decades. And there's one particular era of filmmaking that I feel gets overlooked. And those would be the Hollywood blockbusters from the mid-90s to the early 2000s. We all know that cinema ended in the year 2002 when the first Spider-Man film swung into theaters. So I'd like to take this opportunity to explore the great films that showcase the final golden age of Hollywood. I'm Martin Scorsese, and this is Men in Black. A note to the viewer. This program contains what some might consider to be spoilers, but I guarantee that nothing can spoil this perfect film. This is merely an enhancement, and my own opinion.
They're beautiful, aren't they?
What?
The stars. We never just look anymore.
Before film, before theater, before music, before any human art form, we had the stars. The very first form of entertainment that provoked the imagination, looking up into the sky and creating stories to explain this infinite canvas. It's truly the widest screen format that ever existed. Men in Black, like all the great science fiction films, taps into this endless quagmire, our timeless fascination with space. I mean, what could be said about this landmark 1997 comedy that hasn't already been said? I mean, let's be honest, of all the films I'm covering, this is definitely the most popular, the most quoted, has the most sequels, the most toys, and the most Halloween costume inspirations. But what you might not know is that even though this film grossed over $500 million, it has hidden themes of xenophobia and ageism and the meaning of life as we know it. Aliens have been depicted in cinema since George Méliès's Trip to the Moon in 1902. We've been exploring outer space, extraterrestrials, and flying spacecraft since the art form began. The Day the Earth Stood Still is a personal favorite of mine. The opening depicts a flying saucer landing on a baseball field, a pairing of images that we'll see later in Men in Black. But the scope of this particular image is huge. The entire world is at a standstill, as the title suggests. There is tension, intense fascination, and fear regarding the alien figure. Up until Men in Black, this is how all aliens were treated in cinema, with jaws agape and fingers on the trigger.
We have come to visit you in peace.
In 1996, just the year before, we get a very similar scene in Tim Burton's Mars Attacks. The entire military is mobilized to meet the Martians.
We come in peace.
This is an apparent spoof on The Day the Earth Stood Still, because the Martians start executing American citizens in mass. They, in fact, do not come in peace. Now let's contrast. We've seen these familiar scenes of alien invasions, but now let's watch the opening scene of Men in Black, and it takes place at the U.S.-Mexico border. Now this opening scene was actually suggested by Tommy Lee Jones, who demanded that the script improve if he were going to be part of the project. The film opens with quote-unquote illegal aliens trying to come into the United States. The Men in Black show up and take control of the scene, much to the chagrin of the unforgiving Border Patrol agents.
Y no hablas ni una palabra del español. We got a winner here.
Agent K actually lets the immigrants go free and sincerely welcomes them into the United States. It's this humanitarian gesture that makes the audience like Agent K. To borrow a phrase, this is the save the cat moment. This scene also has a political message, satirizing the term illegal aliens as an absurd classification in light of the bigger intergalactic picture that this film paints.
Mikey?
We're introduced to our very first alien, Mikey, and it's business as usual for the two men. That's where the brilliance of this film lies, in its reverence for what would be the greatest scientific discovery in human history. All throughout the film, we are exposed to absurd, grotesque, and hilarious aliens. And it's simply another day at the office for the Men in Black. The combination of science fiction and comedy had yet to be explored with such bravado until Men in Black. The other unique thing about the film is that it's a quite creative mix of practical effects from Rick Baker's special effects team and the digital work at Industrial Light and Magic. I mean, this is really a keystone film that marks the transition of the Hollywood of handmade practical effects to one dominated by computer-generated imagery. And this transition can be seen through the lens of the one character of Edgar, the Bug, the character that Vincent D'Onofrio plays. We can see this transition unfolding throughout the film.
Is that Leonard?
The Men in Black is actually based on a Marvel comic book created by Lowell Cunningham. The mood of the original comics is apparently much darker than what was adapted into this very playful and family-friendly film. Now, I think we all know I'm not very interested in comic book films. I'd much rather sit down with a lukewarm bowl of soup and watch Diary of a Country Priest, but Men in Black is different. It's not about superpowers or tight-fitting costumes. It's about a secret government agency that monitors alien life on planet Earth. Now, that's very interesting to me. Now, the studio originally wanted Clint Eastwood and Chris O'Donnell, fresh off of his role as Robin in Batman Forever, to play the two leads in the film. But director Barry Sonnenfeld had a different Batman Forever cast member in mind, Tommy Lee Jones. He recently won an Oscar for The Fugitive and was a huge get for the movie. And as far as government agencies go, he actually had some ties to the current administration. Many don't know this, but he was actually Al Gore's roommate at Harvard. Now, there's a very cute story about the casting of this film. The director, Barry Sonnenfeld, was sitting in bed with his wife. They had a tradition of reading the scripts together at the same time. And when they both got done, he suggested Tommy Lee Jones, and she suggested Will Smith. But Sonnenfeld didn't know who Smith was at the time. You know, he was on his show Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but he wasn't a big movie star yet. Will Smith had only done a couple of films. He was in Bad Boys, directed by Michael Bay. During the summer that they filmed Men in Black, this coincided with the release of Independence Day. So while Will Smith started off as a newcomer, he ended the production as a new leading man in Hollywood.
Welcome to Earth.
So apparently, Will Smith was very hesitant to do the picture, because he had just done Independence Day, and he didn't want to do two Alien movies back to back. But Steven Spielberg was the executive producer on Men in Black. So the way he convinced Smith to do the movie was that he sent a helicopter to his house, picked him up, and took him out to a fancy lunch. It's a good tool to have, a helicopter. The film opens with Tommy Lee Jones and his seasoned partner, Agent D, played by Richard Hamilton. But after D botches a containment job, Jones decides to erase his memory and look for a new partner.
I will miss the chase.
You won't.
And then we literally cut to Will Smith chasing down a perpetrator. This impressive athletic display catches the attention of the Men in Black, a clandestine organization, and they bring him in for an aptitude test. Now here's a great example of finding comedy in the mundane. Pay attention to the use of silence, perspective. The circles in the ceiling evoke flying saucers. The use of wardrobe for Smith's character to set him apart, make him feel like an outsider. Jones being able to view from the double-sided glass. And simply by allowing Smith to improvise and use the environment the way a silent movie star might, it turns this mundane aptitude test into one of the most memorable comedic scenes in the entire movie.
Wanna get down on this?
So not only is Will Smith the new guy on the block, as far as Hollywood goes, but in the film, he's playing an NYPD officer. He's a neophyte to the world of aliens living among us on Earth. So he becomes a bit of a proxy for the audience to learn about this new culture. It's Will Smith's character who gets to have those classic, big comedic reactions to the aliens, the kind of reactions we're used to seeing in the movies. We also learn in the film that there are aliens living among us, posing as humans. And if you pause this particular frame, you can find some pretty comedic ones. For example, Tony Robbins, George Lucas, Al Roker, Steven Spielberg, Danny DeVito, Dionne Warwick, Sylvester Stallone, and Newt Gingrich. What's interesting is that Barry Sonnenfeld, the director of Men in Black, started his film as a director of photography. He shot the first three Coen Brothers movies, Blood Simple,
Raising Arizona and Miller's Crossing. He also worked for Rob Reiner, shooting the films When Harry Met Sally and Misery.
His visual storytelling is incredibly distinct, playful, and it heightens the comedy of this film. I mean, just look at the use of wide angles on the face, pushing in on one-liners for emphasis. And to quote director Raoul Walsh, the use of low angles and high angles turns a good picture into a great one. And Men in Black is no stranger to these kinds of extreme angles.
Now, for other films in the series, I usually do a pretty comprehensive breakdown of the story. But with Men in Black, that's not as important. What's so genius about this film is its simplicity. It's almost like a Charlie Chaplin film, where the plot is secondary, and the most important parts are the gags and set pieces.
While the Ed Solomon script helped provide a solid structure, it's the film's willingness to play with the fictional world that creates some of its most memorable sequences.
How much that stings?
Watch this scene where Agent K clumsily sets off a mysterious destruction ball. Does it serve any function to the plot? No. But it shows what's possible in this world and what kind of technology they have available to them. It's also just really funny. Incredibly complex, well choreographed. Same with the tentacle baby scene. Does it serve any function to the plot? No, but it's incredibly funny and cute, and it allows Rick Baker and his team to show off their monster creation skills. Or how about this scene, when the car drives on the ceiling of the Queen's Tunnel? Just another example of the very cool gadgets and toys that the Men in Black have available to them.
But that's looking at it on a macro level. Now, to achieve that on a micro level in a scene is to have really good one-liners. And this movie has some of the best one-liners of any movie in history. So here are some of my favorite one-liners.
NYPD!
NYPD, knock your punk ass down. And that's really funny because knock actually starts with a K and not an N. You know the difference between you and me? I make this look good.
Congratulations.
Congrats. It's a squid. This is about a 9.0 on my weird shit-o-meter. And the only way off this planet is through me.
Another great lesson to take away from this film is that the final act was largely rewritten in the editing room. They decided to simplify the plot, as opposed to getting mired down in complicated sci-fi jargon and lore. They used voiceover and dubbing to their advantage. The restaurant scene between the two aliens. The pug.
Rosenberg wasn't some two-bit Archillian. He was the guardian of a whole galaxy.
The message from the battle cruiser. These were all instances where they decided to simplify the C plot surrounding Orion's belt and the impending destruction of the galaxy by the Archillian battle cruiser.
I mean, making a feature film under 100 minutes is something that's eluded me my entire career. And I've only done it 3 times. Who's That Knocking at My Door, Boxcar Bertha, and After Hours. But I think people forget what a lean story Men in Black is. And it's only 97 minutes long.
This film also has some really fun references and homages in it, representing the farmers, like the Grant Wood painting American Gothic. Vincent D'Onofrio's performance was inspired by George C. Scott in Dr. Strangelove. And if you look at the opening credits of Dr. Strangelove and Men in Black, they were created by the same artist, Pablo Ferro. And while they didn't cast Clint Eastwood, they made a great homage to his Dirty Harry character by converting his .357 Magnum into the smallest gun possible, the Noisy Cricket. The flying saucer going past the baseball field is a very clear reference to the day the Earth stood still. For me, seeing the UFO lights through the trees is an obvious reference to Spielberg's E.T. And the main headquarters for the Men in Black was modeled after the World of Tomorrow wing of the JFK airport. The production designer always wanted to have circles be part of the building structures to evoke flying saucers.
Speaking of production design, what I love about this film is that it has texture to it. There's grime and there's slime. It's unafraid of making a mess.
These disgusting real-world elements help contrast the slick headquarters and pristine dress code of the Men in Black. It's a great pre-9/11 New York film, It has a fun mix of real-life locations like the Guggenheim Museum and studio sets.
Now, of course, I love this film, who doesn't? But I have one gripe with it. And that has to do with the scene where Tommy Lee Jones is looking at a satellite image. Okay? The satellite image, it goes deeper and deeper and deeper in until it gets on a woman. Some woman he longs for. But what I don't like is that the camera actually moves. It actually tilts up. And a satellite image wouldn't be able to do that. So I find this very distracting. Now, science fiction has always been used to explore bigger themes in society. For example, The Day the Earth Stood Still is a warning during the Cold War era. But you wouldn't expect that a summer blockbuster like this would have themes of ageism, feminism, and xenophobia. But it does.
Let's explore the theme of ageism. When Smith first joins the Men in Black, he has one stipulation.
And I don't want nobody calling me son or kid or sport or nothing like that, cool?
Cool, whatever you say, Slick.
But they do just exactly that.
That's tough, kid. Thanks for the egg rolls, kid. Son, why don't you take Junior here with you? Go get him, Tiger.
You doing fine, Ace?
But in the end, the young guy gets the last laugh.
Hey, old guys!
And now for feminism. When we first meet Linda Fiorentino's character, she is simply a damsel in distress. I mean, literally stuck in a tree at one point. But then she ends up saving the day by shooting the bug in the finale. Then she becomes one of the members of the organization. This is the Men in Black, now allowing a woman to be on the force. Very progressive. Maybe they'll even change the name of the organization at some point. They don't. And much to my disappointment, when Men in Black 2 was released 5 years later, they didn't include her in the sequel at all. Now let's look at the film's pro-immigration stance. Aside from the beginning with the Border Patrol that we've already talked about, Agent K mentions how most of the extraterrestrials on our planet live in New York City.
And most of them are decent enough. They're just trying to make a living.
Cab drivers.
Not as many as you'd think.
If this isn't an allegory for immigration, I don't know what is. And they also use bugs as a metaphor for racism.
You know y'all look alike.
Let's take a moment here to highlight Vincent D'Onofrio, who gives an incredible performance as Edgar. The combination of makeup effects and physical performance sell this off-kilter villain. And the arc of this single character represents a sea change in Hollywood forever.
Give me sugar.
Let's look at the introduction of this character. It is a beautiful, uninterrupted 30-second shot. We see the UFO crash to Earth in real time, while the farmer couple bicker in the background. This intro defies the fast-paced MTV editing style that was in vogue at the time. The agonizing stillness maximizes the comedic payoff. While the UFO is CGI, the explosion of the truck is done practically. For the most part, the CGI helps enhance the practical effects in this film. But once we get to the climax, that all changes. The giant bug hidden underneath the skin of Edgar has finally come out for the final boss fight. Rick Baker and his team had actually built a giant Edgar bug puppet with the ability to talk and move. They brought the bug to the set, but at the very last minute, the director opted for a completely CGI bug. Even though Baker and his team won an Oscar for their work on Men in Black, they were extremely disappointed at this choice. They had put in all that hard work for nothing. And as the viewer, we just have to accept that Will Smith is fighting a completely digital character.
The problem is we now have to do all of those shots, which ended up being 45 CG shots that were never in the budget at a cost of about $100,000 a shot. So we've now added $4.5 million to the budget of this movie, but in retrospect, we all agree it was the best $4.5 million we spent.
I don't feel like there's a more potent example of this, of the industry changing. You know, we've become so used to these digital assets in movies, but I really long for the days when everything was done in camera. Even though I must confess that I've used these techniques myself in films, but maybe it's just a matter of enhancing the story, as opposed to being a crutch. But I'm afraid that the The use of this digital bug at the end of the film is a crutch, actually, and very distracting.
1,500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was the center of the universe. 500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was flat, and 15 minutes ago, you knew that people were alone on this planet.
Imagine what you'll know tomorrow.
In fact, the entire movie is about perspective. The opening credit sequence with the dragonfly, accompanied by the great Danny Elfman score, is meant to show the bug's worldview compared to our own. It's about empathy for different points of view. The size of the bug compared to a human.
Goddamn bugs.
The Earth compared to the size of the universe. The fact that the universe is being held safe in a small necklace that fits around a cat plays into this theme as well. The galaxy is on Orion's belt. And then, of course, the coda, with the aliens playing with galaxies as if they are marbles in a playground.
Our fascination with aliens will never end. But maybe Agent K is right, that ignorance is bliss. I mean, he himself opts to get his own memory erased by the end of the film, to resume his normal life. And maybe it's the same way with the pictures. With analyzing the movies the way we are, picking them apart, learning how they're made. Maybe it ruins it somehow. But to paraphrase Carl Sagan, it does no harm to the romance of the sunset to learn a little bit about how it's made. And I don't know about you, but I kind of like the taste better when I know how the sausage is made.